Alright, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving straight into a totally wild 300-year window in ancient Indian history that literally rewired society. Between 600 and 300 BCE, we're talking about scattered, wandering tribes not just settling down, but evolving into these massive, ultimate ancient superpowers. It's a fascinating shift.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be looking at the shift from tribes to territories, the absolute game-changer that was the Iron Revolution, the early statecraft of monarchies and ancient republics, exactly why Magadha came out on top, and finally, the birth of an empire.
Society experienced a dramatic glow-up during this transition. Just picture this. You go from basically having tribal loyalties and trading cattle in a simple barter system to suddenly living as a citizen inside a heavily fortified territory. You're running a complex agricultural economy, and get this, you're actually paying for goods with physical coins. It's night and day.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, from tribes to territories, the shift to settled life.
To really unlock this era, there's just one Sanskrit word you need to know, and that is Janapada. So Jana means tribe or people, and pada means foot. It literally means your geographical footprint. Basically, overnight, where you lived became way more important than who your ancestors were. And as these Janapadas grew larger and absorbed their neighbors, they leveled up into Mahajanpadas, or great states.
Now, what's truly explosive here is the timeline. This entire massive transformation happened in a tightly packed 300-year window. We see the rapid formation of these states, the birth of major world religions like Buddhism and Jainism, the ruthless rise of Magadha, and the direct foundation being laid for the mighty Mauryan Empire. It all happens incredibly fast.
The ancient Buddhist text, the Anguttara Nikaya, actually lists 16 of these great states. Just imagine the entire subcontinent packed with 16 heavily armed competitors. You've got places like Magadha and Vaji in the east, Avanti operating as a massive trade hub down south, and Gandhara absolutely dominating international trade up in the northwest. It was a crowded, highly competitive map.
Moving on to Section 2, the Iron Revolution, the catalyst for growth.
This whole era was sparked by an unstoppable domino effect, and honestly, it all starts with iron. Once people had iron tools, they could finally hack away the stubborn, dense forests of the Gangetic Plains. Clearing that land meant they could build massive rice plantations. Endless food led directly to huge population booms, and those extra people fueled the creation of giant, fortified territorial states.
But here's the thing, you can't exactly fund a massive empire with cows and wheat, right? Kings who were building sprawling cities and paying large standing armies needed reliable taxes. So, to fund those soaring ambitions, they introduced India's first standardized currency, punch-marked coins. Suddenly, physical money became the absolute lifeblood of long-distance trade.
Which brings us to Section 3, Monarchies and Ancient Republics, Early Statecraft. The political landscape back then was surprisingly diverse. While, most states were ruled by traditional, iron-fisted kings holding all the centralized power, there was actually another way. The Vaji Confederacy, for example, experimented with an early republican democracy called a Ganasangha. Instead of one hereditary king calling the shots, they had elected chiefs in assemblies making collective decisions. It was a really radical experiment in early statecraft.
Of course, all this rapid urbanization completely reshaped the social ladder. The traditional system, that strict hierarchy of priests, warriors, merchants, and laborers, became really deeply entrenched. But suddenly, you have these newly wealthy merchants demanding more respect, and the general public was getting really frustrated by costly traditional rituals. So this friction sparked a massive era of religious reform, directly birthing Buddhism and Jainism, which both championed equality and challenged the status quo.
Let's jump right into Section 4. Why Magadha won, the ultimate ancient superpower.
This is honestly one of history's greatest mysteries. You have 16 massive, wealthy states. They all have iron. They all have huge armies. So what secret advantages did Magadha actually possess that let it just systematically swallow its neighbors whole and become the undisputed ruler of northern India?
Well, Magadha basically won the geographic lottery. They sat right in the middle of the fertile Gangetic Plains, which guaranteed them a massive food surplus. They also controlled the Chotanagpur Plateau, giving them a total monopoly on massive iron ore mines, meaning they had the best weapons. They had 3 major rivers acting as free, high-speed highways for trade and troops. And, perhaps most terrifyingly, their local forests were packed with elephants, which they weaponized as literal ancient military tanks. But geography is pretty useless without ruthless execution. Kings like Bimbisara and his son Ajatashatru were absolute strategic masterminds. They combined really clever political marriages to secure their borders with brutal, aggressive military campaigns to dismantle rivals like that Vajji Confederacy. They even strategically moved their capital to an impenetrable fortress city, Paliputra, which was perfectly positioned to just choke off the entire region.
Finally, Section 5, Birth of an Empire, the Foundation of Modernity.
Magadha's bloody, ultimate victory totally defined the future of the subcontinent. They successfully mutated a society of scattered, wandering clans into highly organized territorial superstates. By inventing complex taxation and professional standing armies, Magadha didn't just win a war, they actively prepared the exact blueprint and essentially built the throne for the colossal Mauryan Empire that would soon conquer India. So it leaves us with a really fascinating question. When we look at the complex systems that govern our lives right now, our standing armies, our sprawling urban centers, our coin-based economies, and our democratic assemblies, how much of our modern reality was actually forged 2.5 millennia ago in the fires of the Mahajanpadas? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning